Staff Sergeant Clara Jennings had spent 4 years battling blazes and saving lives at Forward Operating Base Sentinel. Everyone recognized her as the quiet firefighter who always charged into flames when others backed away. But when enemy troops broke through the perimeter at 0300 hours and began deliberately torching every building, Clara's mission shifted from fighting fires to fighting threats. The M416 rifle she snatched from a fallen guard would soon prove that sometimes the only way to halt devastation is to unleash more force than your attackers. Forward Operating Base Sentinel held a crucial position in the disputed Aravan Valley, controlling mountain routes contested for 3 long years. The installation sheltered 800 American personnel across varied units, infantry, logistics, intelligence, medical, and the specialized fire and rescue team that kept everyone alive when missions collapsed. At just 26, Staff Sergeant Clara Jennings served as the lead firefighter and rescue specialist on the emergency response team. Her reputation had already reached legendary status on base after 4 years of fearless service. 23 daring rescues, 47 people pulled from burning vehicles, and countless lives saved under hostile fire. Her comrades called her Smoke because she had a knack for vanishing into the deadliest chaos and reappearing with survivors who shouldn't have made it. Tonight, that talent would face trials beyond anything she had imagined. At 0300 hours, the firehouse was quiet, except for the hum of routine gear checks and vehicle inspections. Clara was swapping out radio batteries when the first explosion ripped apart the pre-dawn silence. The blast thundered from the eastern perimeter, followed instantly by machine gun bursts and the high-pitched scream of incoming mortars. But this wasn't a typical raid. Enemy fighters had slipped inside using tactics meant for maximum destruction rather than tactical gain. Clara dashed toward the firehouse communication hub. As emergency protocols automatically came online, alarms blared across the compound, signaling blazes erupting everywhere as enemy commandos deliberately struck fuel reserves, ammo stores, and living quarters. All units. This is base control, came the urgent call. Multiple breaches confirmed. Hostiles deploying incendiaries to create firestorms. All firefighting elements respond immediately. Clara grabbed her protective gear and rushed for the lead fire truck, only to be slammed to the ground by another massive detonation. The eastern ammunition depot had been hit, sending shock waves across the base and sparking secondary fires that spread at terrifying speed. Through shattered windows, she spotted enemy soldiers moving between structures with flamethrowers and incendiary grenades, turning Forward Operating Base Sentinel into a coordinated inferno designed to annihilate everyone inside. This wasn't ordinary warfare. It was systematic arson with genocidal intent. Clara reached her truck as Specialist Hughes, her driver, gunned the engine. Jennings, fires are flaring faster than we can chase them, he shouted. They're hitting our rigs and blocking access routes. Casualties, Clara demanded. No count yet, but it's bad. First the barracks, then medical. Anyone trying to evacuate getting dropped by snipers. Clara scanned the chaos through the trucks. Armored glass. The assault was perfectly synchronized, trapping personnel in burning buildings while picking off anyone attempting rescue. The math was brutal. 800 Americans, dozens of simultaneous blazes, scarce firefighting resources, and hostiles actively preventing evacuation. Hughes, head for The medical facility, Clara ordered. We'll pull survivors and set up a defensive perimeter. The fire truck roared through smoke-choked streets as gunfire erupted from every direction. Enemy squads had seized control of intersections, using heavy firepower to cut down anyone trying to organize a defense. As they neared the medical facility, Clara Jennings saw just how calculated the enemy's assault had been. The building was swallowed in flames and hostile soldiers waited to gun down anyone who tried to flee. Bodies of medics lay strewn at the exits, cut down as they attempted to save patients. Hugh's sniper at 2 o'clock. His targeting anyone making a break for it. Jennings. We need backup. The call came. This wasn't firefighting anymore. It was outright slaughter. Through her binoculars, Clara watched the methodical destruction continue. The enemy wasn't content with burning structures. They were executing survivors of the initial blaze. The mission was clear. Wipe out every American on base with fire and bullets. Then movement caught her eye. Near the inferno, Specialist Martinez, the base medic, was pinned behind a concrete barrier with 3 wounded troops. Gunfire pinned them in place and the spreading flames would consume them. Within minutes. Hughes, we're going in. For extraction. Jennings, that's suicide. They've got every angle covered. Clara studied the scene, running through options. Normal. Firefighting required secure zones and coordinated aid, but tonight nothing was normal. The enemy controlled it all. The fire truck pushed forward under relentless fire. Bullets hammered the armored glass while enemy squads tried to disable the vehicle with concentrated volleys. Clara unleashed the truck's water cannon, driving attackers back as Hughes steered through wreckage-choked streets. They reached Martinez's position just as flames began devouring the concrete shield. Clara grabbed medical gear and sprinted across open ground. Enemy rounds cracking by her ears. Martinez, how many? 3. Critical. 2 can still move, he shouted. Jennings, this isn't just arson. They're executing anyone who lends a hand. It's extermination. Together, they drag the wounded into the truck under intensifying fire. The rescue demanded repeated exposed dashes through terrain fully covered by enemy snipers. On her final sprint to Martinez's position, Clara stumbled upon Specialist Silver, bleeding out beside his rifle. He had been holding off attackers when the bullets found him. Jennings, he rasped, shoving his M416 into her hands. They're killing everyone. Don't let them win. Silver's last breath marked the moment Clara's role shifted from rescuer to avenger. For 4 years, she had saved lives by quelling flames. Tonight she would preserve lives by creating her own fire. The M416 fit naturally heavier than her usual tools, but sturdy and sure. A full magazine waited along with spare ammo. Silver had carried for a defense he'd never complete. Martinez, get them to the truck. I'll deal with the snipers. Jennings, you're a firefighter, not a soldier. Tonight, she answered firmly. I'm whatever they need me to be. Clara. Jennings pushed through smoke and fire with the same fearless drive she had always brought to rescues. Only now she wasn't seeking survivors. She was hunting those responsible. The first sniper had set up in a second-story window of the burning communications building, calmly targeting anyone trying to organize defenses and cutting down Americans with cold precision. Clara advanced using the very skills she'd honed for years in dangerous structures. Smoke cloaked her movements, and her intimate knowledge of layouts gave her routes the enemy never considered. She found the sniper fixated on targets outside, never realizing the danger creeping in from within. One pull of the M416's trigger dropped him instantly. One down, countless more to go. From that vantage point, she could see the scope of the carnage. At least 20 commandos torching buildings and executing anyone rallying resistance. Their coordination showed clear rehearsal, but they had overlooked one crucial factor. They hadn't counted on a firefighter who knew every wall, every access point, every way smoke and flame could be used against them. The next threat was a machine gun nest locking down the main evacuation route, trapping wounded Americans in burning structures. Clara used maintenance tunnels to get beneath them, surfacing behind two soldiers so focused on their targets they never saw her coming. 2 more shots. Both fell before they could react. 3 down, plenty still left. Moving like a phantom through her blazing home, Clara struck again and again. Her deep knowledge of the facility turning the inferno into an ally. She knew where basements connected, which rooftops offered cover, which smoke-filled halls opened to perfect lines of fire. She also understood flames themselves, using them for concealment and distraction in ways the enemy couldn't match. While the commandos coughed and faltered, she moved with the assurance of someone who had lived in this chaos for years. Her 4th strike came against an observation post feeding targets to mortar crews outside the wire. She slipped through a broken wall and into the building, relying on the instincts she'd sharpened in countless emergencies. The spotter never saw her. He died before realizing the firefighter had become a predator. 4 down, her pace of elimination quickening. Enemy radios crackled with worry as their carefully placed troops vanished one after another. Confusion spread in their ranks. Clara's next objective, the team that had destroyed the base armory, cutting off American access to weapons. 3 guards stood watch among the wreckage, ensuring nothing could be salvaged. She slipped through the burning debris, a death trap for anyone without her fire safety expertise. The blistering environment shielded her approach until she unleashed the M416 in 3 quick bursts, dropping all 3 before they knew she was there. From their bodies, she collected spare ammunition and grenades, stretching her ability to fight on. 7 eliminated. Still many left, but their confidence was clearly unraveling. The hunt pressed on through smoke-choked passages and fire-lit courtyards. Clara moving like a predator in her own territory. 4 years of emergency operations had armed her with every advantage. The enemy had prepared for infantry, armor, and air support. They had not prepared for her. They had never accounted for a firefighter who understood that saving lives sometimes meant removing threats before they could strike. The 8th target was a sniper covering the helicopter pad, blocking medical evacuations and ready to kill anyone coordinating air support. Clara advanced through the base fire station, slipping along routes she knew from years of maintenance work paths enemy scouts had completely overlooked. 1 precise shot from the M416 dropped him instantly. 8 down. But the enemy was beginning to adjust, shifting their tactics in response to the mysterious losses. Radio chatter revealed growing alarm among their commanders, who started pulling troops into clusters for mutual defense, abandoning lone positions in favor of group strongholds. That change opened the door to larger battles that would Test Clara's rapidly evolving combat instincts. The biggest enemy force had dug in at the fuel depot, threatening to ignite thousands of gallons of aviation fuel if challenged. 6 commandos guarded it, their plan hinging on turning the depot into a bomb to prevent counterattacks. Clara studied the scene carefully, weighing options to neutralize them without triggering the catastrophic explosion that would finish the base. Her answer came from knowledge. Only a firefighter carried how fuel fires start, how they spread, and how to suppress them. Rather than charge straight in, she topped the fire suppression system built to flood the depot with chemical retardant. Originally meant for accidents, it now became a weapon. Foam poured across the site, snuffing the explosion threat, while blinding enemy shooters. Clara fired with ruthless precision, cutting down all 6 in less than half a minute. 14 enemies eliminated. The depot was safe, momentum shifting back toward American hands. Yet, the greatest challenge still loomed. The command cell. Orchestrating the base's destruction. Intelligence placed at least 10 commandos inside the headquarters, coordinating with outside units and keeping defenders from organizing resistance. This fight would decide whether their genocidal mission succeeded or collapsed. Clara moved toward the shattered headquarters using the same instincts that had saved lives in hundreds of emergencies. The structure, half ruined from blasts, was treacherous, but she knew how to traverse weak, unstable frames. Enemies thought these passages impassable. She used them as cover. She reached a vantage point overlooking their command post, observing defensive layouts and their constant radio traffic with outside support. 10 men covered every entrance. Reinforcements were already moving in from the perimeter. Time was short. Clara opened the fight by destroying their communications, riddling radios with bullets while dropping 3 operators before they knew what hit them. Chaos erupted. The remaining soldiers scrambled, sweeping the building with coordinated search drills. But Clara held advantages they couldn't match. An intimate knowledge of layouts, years spent working inside smoke-filled collapsing structures and American hands. Yet, the greatest challenge still loomed. The command cell. Orchestrating the base's destruction. Intelligence placed at least 10 commandos inside the headquarters, coordinating with outside units and keeping defenders from organizing resistance. This fight would decide whether their genocidal mission succeeded or collapsed. Clara moved toward the shattered headquarters using the same instincts that had saved lives in hundreds of emergencies. The structure, half ruined from blasts, was treacherous, but she knew how to traverse weak, unstable frames. Enemies thought these passages impassable. She used them as cover. She reached a vantage point overlooking their command post, observing defensive layouts and their constant radio traffic with outside support. 10 men covered every entrance. Reinforcements were already moving in from the perimeter. Time was short. Clara opened the fight by destroying their communications, riddling radios with bullets while dropping 3 operators before they knew what hit them. Chaos erupted. The remaining soldiers scrambled, sweeping the building with coordinated search drills. But Clara held advantages they couldn't match. An intimate knowledge of layouts, years spent working inside smoke-filled collapsing structures and a resolve hardened by watching her comrades die in flames. She moved through the wreck like a relentless machine, the M416 spitting fire as she cut down anyone crossing her path. Enemy fighters fell in hallways they thought were secure, cut down by a firefighter who knew that some blazes can only be ended at the source. The last commando dropped just as reinforcements reached the perimeter, discovering their infiltration force wiped out and their mission utterly failed. 24 enemy soldiers had stormed forward operating base Sentinel with orders to slaughter everyone through fire and execution. 24 now lay dead, eliminated by one firefighter who chose to protect lives by taking them. Clara stepped out of the headquarters as American reinforcements secured the compound and rushed to aid the wounded. Flames were being brought under control. The enemy was destroyed, and hundreds of Americans lived because of actions no manual had ever prepared. Her four. Major Harris approached as she set the M416 down, ready to return to her true duties. Jennings, I need to understand what happened tonight. Sir. The enemy was systematically murdering our people with fire and executions. I neutralized them using what was at hand. Sergeant, you took down an entire infiltration unit alone while saving hundreds. That isn't standard firefighting. Sir, firefighters adapt to whatever threat they face. Tonight, the danger was enemy soldiers, so I put them out. Harris looked across the battered base, seeing what her actions had preserved. Buildings damaged but standing, troops wounded but alive, operations intact instead of destroyed. Jennings, you've shown combat skill beyond most infantry. Where did that come from? Sir, firefighting is about fast decisions, moving through deadly environments, and shielding those who can't shield themselves. The principle holds whether the threat is fire or armed hostiles. The after-action review laid bare the scope of what Clara had done in 6 relentless hours. 24 confirmed kills against trained commandos, 0 friendly casualties during her runs, and base functionality preserved despite a coordinated attempt to erase it. Yet, her greatest achievement was cultural, not tactical. Clara had proven that extraordinary results could come from unexpected places when necessity demanded courage beyond procedure. Sergeant Jennings, Colonel Wallace, the regional commander, told her in the formal debrief, "You're adapting emergency response techniques directly to combat needs. Expand on facility knowledge." Wallace pressed. Firefighters understand construction, ventilation, electrical layouts, and weak points that can be used for tactical gain. We know which walls break, which corridors conceal, which areas become death traps in crisis. General Wallace activated a wall display mapping Sentinel's layout, overlaid with enemy positions and Clara's movements. Your pathing and positioning show insights infantry training doesn't cover. You exploited tunnels, utility shafts, and compromised structures as tactical tools. Yes. Emergency responders develop spatial awareness and environmental mastery that can be decisive in defense. Clara replied. The session lasted 3 hours, examining technical detail, training implications, and global applications. Her improvised combat methods were dissected by tactical experts who recognized them as innovations in facility defense. 6 months later, Clara received orders to establish the Military Emergency Combat Training Center at Fort Braxton, a groundbreaking program designed to prepare support personnel for combat when security measures collapsed. The mission was unprecedented, turning firefighters, medics, mechanics, and logisticians into last resort defenders, who could safeguard installations under threat. At the activation ceremony, Brigadier General Cortez, commander of Special Training Operations, praised her. Major Jennings, you are pioneering a new form of base defense, one that reveals the untapped tactical potential of support staff. The facility soon drew students from allied forces worldwide, eager to learn the American approach to hybrid emergency combat operations. NATO nations soon sent observers to study the program, intrigued by techniques that overturned long-held beliefs about rigid military roles specialization. Clara's curriculum revolved around three guiding principles quickly known across military circles as Jennings rules. Environmental knowledge cancels tactical disadvantage. Adaptive thinking breaks conventional limits, and protective instincts must override personal safety when lives hang in the balance. The first graduates of her program deployed to forward bases, performing standard emergency duties in routine times and shifting seamlessly into defensive roles during combat. The results were beyond expectation. Installations staffed with Jennings protocol trainees posted dramatically higher survival rates during assaults as support personnel who knew the infrastructure inside and out guided defenses with unmatched efficiency. The transformation is extraordinary, said Colonel Morgan, commander of Forward Operating Base Phoenix after his Jennings-trained firefighters repelled a complex infiltration attempt. People who once evacuated during attacks now act as force multipliers, strengthening our defense. Yet, the most profound impact was cultural, not tactical. Clara's example shattered assumptions about strict role divisions, proving that under extraordinary pressure, support staff could evolve into combat-effective operators without abandoning their life-saving missions. Excellence doesn't recognize job titles, she told a gathering of emergency service commanders. When lives are on the line, exceptional people adapt to the mission. That's what survival demands. The line between combat and support roles lost all meaning when survival demanded every person contribute to defense. 2 years after founding the training center, Major Clara Jennings was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel and appointed Director of Integrated Defense Operations, a role created to coordinate traditional combat units with newly trained support personnel. Her task was to design doctrine for bases facing threats beyond conventional defenses, requiring all hands, regardless of specialty, to take part in survival. The concept proved vital as enemy forces escalated with advanced infiltration tactics meant to overwhelm standard security bases with integrated defense models consistently outperformed those relying only on regular military protection. At a strategic planning conference, Admiral Foster, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, addressed her. Lieutenant Colonel Jennings, your innovations have reshaped how we approach base defense. The Jennings protocol has now been adopted throughout the Allied command structure. Recognition was welcome, but Clara's true reward came from field reports, accounts of lives saved by people who had broken past RO boundaries. A medic in Afghanistan who fought off infiltrators while treating the wounded. A maintenance tech in Syria who used facility knowledge to guide special forces through labyrinth and buildings. During a hostage rescue. A logistics officer in Iraq who directed defensive fire using supply route expertise no combat unit possessed. Each story validated the principle forged that night at Forward Operating Base. Sentinel. When lives depend on you, you become whatever is needed. Her program went on to train over 2,000 support personnel in advanced defense skills, many of whom later saved lives in situations where traditional responses would have failed. The methods were absorbed into standard curricula across military MES, ensuring future generations of support staff would recognize their defensive potential. The Jennings Doctrine, as it came to be known in strategic circles, marked a fundamental shift in how the military viewed personnel utilization in times of crisis. 3 years after her legendary stand, Lieutenant Colonel Clara Jennings received the Legion of Merit for her groundbreaking contributions to military defense innovation. Senior officers from allied nations that had adopted variations of her methods attended the ceremony. Yet, for Clara, the real measure of success wasn't in medals or applause. It was knowing her actions had created a systematic approach to protecting lives that would endure long after her own service. Some are remembered for a single act of heroism, General Wallace said during the event. Others are remembered for building systems that inspire countless acts of heroism. Lieutenant Colonel Jennings has done both. Looking out over the audience of military personnel gathered to honor her, Clara reflected on her journey from firefighter to tactical innovator to institutional reformer. What began as a simple vow to protect lives had grown into something far greater. Proof that excellence appears when people reject limitations that don't serve the mission. The 24 enemy commandos who died that night had unknowingly catalyzed changes that would safeguard thousands in future conflicts. Their unintended legacy was showing the military that rigid role boundaries could become liabilities when survival required adaptability and relentless dedication to success. Jennings had learned that lesson in fire and combat, and she had passed it on to others who would carry it forward, that the defense of life transcends every other consideration. The firefighter who became a warrior had shown that heroes are defined not by their original roles, but by their willingness to step beyond them when everything is at stake. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to Old Bill's Tales for more incredible accounts like this.